Hi, my name is Grant Fritchey. I'm the Scary DBA. I work for Redgate Software. I'm here to talk to you about backups and restores. We're going to take a really basic walkthrough and hit some of the highlights of the best practices that you're going to use when running a backup and restore. The thing is, you need to think of backup and restore not as protection for data, not as protection for your systems, but as protection for your business. So the most important thing you can do for backups is talk to your business people to understand what their expectations are in terms of disaster recovery from you. You also need to make sure that those expectations are realistic and ones that you can achieve. That said, one of the most important things you can do for your disaster recovery scenarios is set up backup processing. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to walk you through a full backup, and I'm going to highlight some of the things that I like to do in a full backup, how I like to do them. I'm going to show you today just GUIs. We're only going to use the GUIs. We're not going to automate anything today. Automation is a key, but we won't be covering it. I'm also going to show you restores and restore verification and why you need to do that stuff and some of the details around that. I'm also going to cover log backups and recovery to a point in time using logs. So we'll cover just the basics of backups and restores. The thing is, I want you guys to practice this stuff. You need to know how to do it. You need to practice it. So let's get started right now with the task of backing up a database. Here it is. You've got a basic backup screen. You're ready to go. You get to pick and choose which database you're going to do. The recovery model on the database in this case is simple. We'll change that in a little bit. It only gives us two choices, full and differential. Differentials are for another day. Copy only is for another day. Yes, we're going to back up the database. We're not backing up files and file groups. The name of the database. Believe it or not, the name of the backup. Believe it or not, this is important. Backup files can get moved around. They can get rearranged. They can get changed. They're going to be here. They're going to be there. You're going to have they're going to be all over the place. If you name them, my special backup for video, now you know what it is. I've created this backup just for you for the video of backups and restores. Never type during demos. What I've got now is a name and a description, so I know when I find this backup at some later date, I know what it is, what it's for, if there's anything interesting about it, if there was some reason I did it separate from my regular backup process, or if it was part of my regular backup process, I can name it, regular daily backup. And then I know that this is part of my daily backup routine. There's no surprises because I've got information stored with the backup. We'll go back to typing during demos is bad. Special backup. Typing and talking is bad. Anyway, you can set up expiration dates and stuff on video on backups. I'm not going to get into that. That's getting into some more advanced topics. We don't want to do that. But we do want to remove this existing file, and we're going to create a new file just for you guys. You can use the GUI. You click on the ellipsis. You can pick and choose where you want to put stuff. It's just going to be easier for me to provide this mm_video.back. It's just as quick, just as easy to type, depending on what you're typing. So now we're set up for doing a full backup, or are we? There's a few other bits and pieces over here. First up, back up to the existing media set. Now you can back up to a new media set every time, give media set a name and description, or you can back up to an existing media set. If you back up to an existing media set, I recommend overwriting the existing backup sets. You can stack your backups inside of a single file. I know people who do it. There are good reasons why, but there are also good reasons against. My personal preference is for individual files, but I'm not going to, that, like I said, it's my personal preference. You can make this go either way you like. Reliability. This is one of your more important areas. This is where you need to focus. You need to verify your backups. Backups are important. Backups are extremely important. Backups are one of the most important things you do. But your backups are only as good as your last restore. Thank you, Kimberly Tripp. Great saying. You must verify that your backups are good, that you can restore them. Otherwise, it's simply a file that you're maintaining. So one of the first steps you're going to do is verify the backup when it's finished. This will run a verify only restore. It's not actually a restore, it's just a validation of the backup file itself. It's a good thing. To make that even better, we're going to perform checksums. The checksums are validate that the information read off the disk is the same as the information written to the backup media. And those checksums are stored and used by the backup verification. So all of this stuff is part of validating that the backup is good, that the backup is going to work, and so you need to do this. Next, compression. I heartily recommend you compress your backups because it makes them faster. Makes them faster to backup and faster to restore because it's moving less information to the disk. Also, by the way, it saves you disk space, and management loves that. But don't worry about that. The main thing is you're saving speed. You're not saving speed, you're gaining speed. Anyway, now I've got a backup set up and ready to go. I'm going to overwrite my existing media. I'm going to verify the backup. I'm going to perform checksums. It's going to a file that I want. I've given it a name and a description, and it's a full backup. I'm ready to go. Click the OK button. Backup is completed. Now my database is protected. I'm ready for any kind of an emergency. Let's create an emergency. Let's say that we've done something bad and we need to restore this database. I'm going to right click on it. Again, go back to Tasks, Restore Database. Restore is a little bit different than your regular backups. First off, you can pick and choose where you're going to restore it to, and you can type into this and create a new database from a restore. Most recent possible, we'll be talking about that more in a little bit. Now you can restore from the database or from a device. Now if you're restoring from a database, what it is the information that's been stored about the most recent backups for that database are all kept available in MSDB, so you can take a look at them and understand what's going on with the backup, and you can run things that way. There's a lot of good information in here. This is stuff more or less from the backup header. It includes the log sequence numbers. If you're using the stacked backup approach where there's multiple backup sets in a single piece of media, it'll show you the position of the backup, all that fun stuff, the start date and the finish date, so you know how long your backups took. This one took all of 1 second. That's a tough, long backup. Anyway, all this information is available to you from the backup file, or from the backup. But let's go to the media directly. Let's assume that we're not restoring from some other location, we're restoring from some other server, and we go in here and we'll find our video back. Okay. Now the interesting thing is the name of the backup is there. I can see the names I supplied, the special name I supplied, so I know what this backup is. Again, the LSNs and all this other stuff, because all this information is coming from the backup header. And so now I'm almost ready to run a backup, but not quite. First off, am I overwriting the existing database? Well, yes, I am. I want to overwrite the existing database. If I didn't want to overwrite the existing database, I could create a new database, in which case I would have to move the physical files, which are located here. I would have to give them a new location because the existing database is using them, and so we'd have to change that. If I'm doing multiple files, I can prompt. If I want to restrict access, I can, but the really important part of the restore operation is down here. Restore with recovery versus restore with no recovery. If you're doing differential restores after a full restore, if you're doing log restores after a full restore, you cannot leave your database in a recovered state. You need to leave it in a non-recovered state, ready for more backups to be applied. A lot of people will run their backups in a no recovery state until they're sure that they've got everything restored the way they want it, and then they'll recover. Frequently, people forget to recover, and then they wonder why the database is still in a restoring state. Make sure you recover your databases all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and leave it in place for this one, and we're going to run the restore operation. You can see the execution shows how fast things are going by, and the restore is done, and now we've got our database back in place. Now let's talk about log backups and log restores. First off, I need to change my database. My database is currently in simple recovery mode. Because it's in simple recovery mode, I can't even take log backups. So I'm going to switch it over to the full recovery mode now. From this point forward, any transactions are recorded into the log, and until I run a log backup, those things are kept around forever. So I probably should run a log backup soon. But first, because I switched the recovery from simple to full, I must take an initial full backup. I've changed the basic structure of the database in such a way that it's no longer in a state where I can restore it except restoring it to simple. I couldn't simply run log backups because I need a full backup with transaction markers such that the log backups can work against it. So I have to do a new backup. So I'm going to call this my new full backup, and done because I switched from simple to full recovery. All right, now I'm going to remove this. I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to call it d:\backup. I'm going to call it, let's call it mm new full .back. Let's go in and check our options. I still want to overwrite in case there's already one there called that. I definitely want to verify my backups. I've changed something in my production database. I'm going to run a backup of it, and I'm going to verify that backup. I definitely still want to run checksums. I definitely still want compression. Click OK, and now I get a backup completed. Now then, I can start working with logs, log backups, and transactions. To see a transaction occur, let's go and add some data. Now we're in the movie management database, so we're going to insert into agent. And let's give the agent a name. We'll call him Herman Munster, and he is agent to the strange. And I was running tests earlier, so I've got this test column here I've been messing with. And so now we've got a good backup, good insert statements ready to go. So now we've added Herman. He's in there. He's now in our system. And we can play around with it and do a select star from agent order by agent ID descending, just to see Herman. And there he is, Herman Munster, agent to the strange. So now we've got this in there. It's a transaction that has occurred. So let's do a log backup. Again, we go to backup. It's for the movie management database. We're going to make sure we do a transaction log this time. It's going to be a transaction log backup, and this one's going to be called After Herman. That's the name of our backup, and we will need to remove this file. We will need to add a new file. We'll call it bBackup, and we'll call it hermanlog.back, okay? So we know which one it is. So that's our Herman log. It's after Herman, and we should still perform checksums. We absolutely should. And we can use compression. We absolutely can. There's nothing wrong with this. So click OK. Now we've backed up our log. We've now got that transaction has been saved. It's good to go. If we need to do a recovery, we can. Now, let's add some more data. let's add Frank in Furter. Probably didn't spell that right. And he is agent to the terribly strange. We'll do an insert. And we'll just validate that the data is there. And there it is, Frankenfurter, agent to the terribly strange, and it's good to go. That's another log entry, another transaction, so we can do another log backup. Let's go to the backups. Again, we want to do a transaction log backup. We're going to call this one after Frankfurter. We don't want to use the Herman log unless you want to do an append, which you can. We're not going to in this case. And we'll call it after Frank.back. Again, we go to the options. Again, we make sure we do an overwrite. Again, we want to perform a checksum on the log backups. And again, we want to compress our backups here, okay? Now the log backup is done. We've got log backup checksums. We've got log backup compression. We're all happy. We're all good to go. You know what? I'm wondering if maybe having Frankenfurter in here is not inappropriate. So maybe let's roll that back. Let's do a restore to a point in time prior to Frankenfurter being in there. So let's run, oops, hang on first. Before we do that, let's make sure nothing but nothing is in the movie management database, because that causes all kinds of problems. You can't restore a database when there's people logged into it and working on it. So here's our restore. Notice, using from database, it knows which backups we have because it's all this stored in MSDB and it's tracked all this stuff. And you can see the first LSN for each of these, the last LSN for each of these, and the way things are set up. And so you can see the LSN, of course, is log sequence number. And so you can see the progression of the logs as they occur and the things that have happened on the database over time. And you can see how that stuff is all set up. So if we wanted to remove Frankenfurter, we could simply do this. Take that log backup off, continue doing point in time most recent possible. It'll be most recent possible after Herman, though, not the most recent possible after Frankfurter. Let's take a look at the options here. We do want to overwrite. We are going to replace. Because we're letting SQL Server manage all the files, we're going to go ahead and finish up with recovery. Okay, so let's click OK. And you see it progressed. It restored two things. We click OK. And let's take a look at our database. Let's run the select statement. Oops, my bad. It's supposed to be in the right place. Let's run the select statement. And we see Herman is in there, but Frankenfurter is gone. Now let's put Frankenfurter back in. And then let's run another log backup. After Frankfurter again. And we'll add a file, d:\backup after frank.log. Okay, let's check the options. Let's overwrite the existing media. Let's perform the checksums and let's compress and click OK. So there's the log backup. Now, let's make sure that we're not in the database. Let's make sure we're not in the database. Now let's do a task, restore database. Now this time, you'll notice now we've got after Herman, we've got after Frankfurter again. Let's take a look at the times. Now we've got it up to 9:37 and 38 seconds. Let's restore to a point in time. Let's restore to 9:36. 9:36 and 10 seconds, okay? Doesn't matter. I mean, but the idea is that we're restoring to a point in time between these two values. Okay, the finish date is 9/31, finish date's 9/38. SQL Server will figure out which of these it's needed, and it will use them appropriately because you've got a point in time that you're going to stop the recovery at. Now let's make sure we overwrite. We're going to replace our database. We are going to finish with recovery. SQL Server will manage whether or not the recovery is going on during these different things. And with that, we'll click OK. So now we've recovered to a point in time. Now let's just see if that point in time is prior to or after Frankfurter getting inserted. Oops, again, got to go to the right database, don't you? Execute. And in fact, that time was prior to when Frankenfurter was inserted. So even though Frankenfurter is part of that final log, when we ran this restore operation, it did not include that transaction because that transaction took place post the time that we were asking for. So that is a point in time recovery. So let me just tell you real quick, what we went over again was full backups and full restores, log backups and log restores. We talked about the importance of checksum in order to validate your backups. We talked about the importance of verify only as part of the backup process, the full backup process, as a way to validate your backups. And we talked about the most important mechanism for validating your backups is what we just did, which is a restore. Finally, if you followed along with any of this at all, or if you use this to practice later, practicing your restores is one of the most important things you can do. That's all I've got. Thank you very much. This is Grant Fritchey. I work for Redgate Software. I am the Scary DBA.